After winning our first 3 games, we were ranked 7th in the nation heading into our Saturday afternoon game against UCF. UCF had beat us my sophomore year, and last year we won 31-17 after scoring a late touchdown to close the game out. But so far this season, I was averaging 200 passing yards along with 150 rushing yards per game. But the only flaw in my game was that I was still struggling with turning the ball over, mostly off of interceptions. A minute and a half into the game, I scored my first touchdown, running it into the end zone for 20 yards. One thing I will say is that my offensive line has really improved this year. Other teams are rarely getting pressure, and I attribute that to my relationship with my O-lineman. The line was struggling during my junior year, so they started a tradition of having a film night on Wednesdays where they'd also play cards or play some video games and party a little bit. Once I started coming to these get-togethers, I started to become close friends with them, and I knew for a fact that if the O-line liked their quarterback and knows their quarterback, they're probably going to block even better for them to try and keep them clean in the pocket. Why am I telling you this? Well, I got my entire offensive line watches, and I got each of them a gaming PC too. You can never go wrong with showing the dudes that protect you a little bit some appreciation. And I benefit a lot from the NIL money just because I play quarterback, but these linemen have just as much of an important role on the team, and they deserve recognition as well. I was making plays left and right trying to get a 2-possession lead, but when I scrambled outside the pocket, I ended up fumbling, giving UCF a chance to take a 3-point lead with a touchdown drive themselves. With a minute left before halftime, we had one more chance to take the lead, and I found our wide receiver tight end hybrid, Kenny Wiggins, for a big gain over the middle, splitting the safeties apart. We got stopped on 3rd down, but I begged coach to go for it, and I found Carson Gay for the first down pickup to keep our chance of getting a touchdown going. But UCF's defense was getting consistent pressure on the last couple of plays. They ended up getting a sack on 2nd down, and then on 3rd and 8, they got pressure once again, forcing a bad pass that was incomplete, so we had to settle for a field goal before the end of the half. UCF came out and scored a touchdown to start the second half, and we had to answer. Coach did a great job of play calling by running a few times to open up the deep shot on play action, which ended up working perfectly as we found Chris Bell wide open for the touchdown to tie the game. It was the 4th quarter, and UCF had scored again, taking a 6-point lead but missing the PAT when we found Rich Crawford, our old reliable wide receiver. Well, he's not really old, he's actually younger than Chris Bell, but he ended up picking up a big first down. I ended up getting sacked, which made it 3rd and 16, and I escaped outside the pocket, got some blocks from my wide receiver, shifted a couple of safeties, got into the end zone for the touchdown to take a 1-point lead with a minute and a half remaining. But we were not in the clear yet. UCF just needed a field goal to win because we only had a 1-point lead, and they ended up getting down to our 30-yard line, and on 3rd and 5, the quarterback ended up getting sacked. For a loss, they tried to kick the field goal, they missed it, and we ended up getting a very close win against UCF, who could have given us our first loss of the season. And so because the game was so close, we didn't go up in the rankings. We were still ranked 7th against Cincinnati, who was 1-3 at this point. And even though Cincy was 1-3, I started the game off shaky, throwing an interception, trying to find Elijah Downing in the back of the end zone, and they returned it up to the 20-yard line. Getting back to the weekly get-togethers with the offensive linemen, after I started going, I decided to host a team-wide monthly hangout at my house. Believe it or not, you can get a really nice house in Louisville, Kentucky with the amount of money that I was making. And I wasn't making Shadur Sanders or Caleb Williams type of money, but I'll say that I was making enough to afford $1 million home with a pool, and I wanted everyone on the team bought into our goal of winning the Natty this year. We needed to go undefeated, which would mean we'd have to maintain focus throughout the entire season, and maintaining that focus requires that every single player on the roster, from the long snapper to our star linebacker, has to be locked in every single play of every game. My goal was to treat the walk-ons and the fringe roster players the best to keep their morale up, get to know them, and help them progress. And like I mentioned my junior year, we got some new freshmen on the team after our bowl win against Auburn and our successful top 25 finish, and these guys weren't going to see the field most likely, but if they did, they needed to be ready to contribute immediately. And there was no better example of a player contributing immediately than Rich Crawford. He was consistently my #1 target, and despite being a sophomore, he was consistently open nearly every single play when they were not double teaming him. In retrospect, I do have to give a hats off to the defense because normally our offense is scoring 40 points per game, but in this game, Cincinnati was doing a pretty good job of stopping us. Chris Bell got a nice catch off of a corner route to get us into the red zone, and then on 3rd and 7, we had a really conservative halfback screen call that got blown up immediately, and we had to settle for a field goal and take a 10-point lead. And I just wanted to take a quick second to admire this beautiful pass to Kenny Wiggins, which I absolutely would not have thrown in my junior, sophomore, or freshman years, but it ended up being called back off of holding anyways. Usually a holding penalty to start a drive is a death sentence, but we found Carson Gay on 1st down, making it a much shorter 2nd down conversion to Elijah Downing. And then once again, we ran a screen on 3rd and long, and it got blown up. Wilson picked up a couple of yards, but on 4th and 6, we faked a punt. We picked up the 1st down, and then I found Chris Bell on a curl route to get us inside the red zone. Once again, Cincinnati's D held us to a 3rd down, and we tried to convert by finding Maurice Turner, our running back, but he dropped the ball, and we still ended up winning the game 20-7. And again, a big shout out to our defense who held Cincinnati to just 7 points. After the game, I had fallen a little bit in the Heisman standings as Noah Fafita Mia had moved up to number 4, and I had fallen down to the number 5 spot. Now, winning the Heisman wasn't the end-all be-all for me. I ultimately wanted to win a national championship with our team, but it would be a nice cherry on top to finish this season out and a good recognition of the value I brought to the team. And speaking of the value I brought to the team, we had moved up to the number 6 spot, but then I had a horrible pitch out on an option play that Manning intercepted and returned for a fumble 6. At one of the offensive lineman meetups, I met this girl named Mia, and no, she wasn't built like an offensive lineman. We started hanging out a bunch, and eventually we started dating, and one thing that I was always wary of was dating any woman who knew that I was a college quarterback, because it was so difficult to read their intentions and if they actually liked me or if they just liked what I could give them. So Mia was cool, but I definitely didn't fully trust her yet. And then at this point in the game, we had 80 rushing yards and over 50 passing yards, but no points to show for it. I found Chris Bell at the 1-yard line. A Memphis safety made an incredible diving tip to knock the ball away on 2nd and goal, and then on 3rd and goal, finally Maurice Turner got into the end zone to tie the game 7-7. On our next drive, we started from our own 5-yard line. I found Rich Crawford to start us off, and at the start of the second quarter, we were tied 7-7, and it reminded me of our mantra to leave no doubt, and being tied with a 3-3 team to start the second quarter was definitely not that. Of course, that would mean that we would need to pick up our offense. Last game, we finished with only 20 points on the board versus a 1-3 team, and Memphis wasn't that much better. I escaped outside the pocket and got us down to the 1, but I went down with a shoulder injury that took me out for the entire second half, and then I ended up returning for the second half after getting a cortisone injection and doing some stretches. They wanted me to get some x-rays done to be safe, but I knew that I had to return to the game with our team only up by 3 to start the second half. In just 2 plays, I got us from our own 20 down to Memphis's 5-yard line, with Kenny Wiggins taking a 15-yard pass and turning it into 50 yards instead. Memphis didn't make it easy, but on 3rd and goal, I ended up finding our backup wide receiver, Davidson, on a slant for the touchdown. Memphis turned the ball over late in the 3rd, giving us great field position to start off our drive, and I found Rich Crawford on a double move post route to split the defense down the middle for another touchdown to give us a 31-14 lead. We felt pretty secure with a 17-point lead, but on 3rd and 6, I wanted to convert the first down, and I got absolutely drilled by a linebacker. The back of my head got launched into the turf, but I did come in for the final QB kneel, and we narrowly won 31-28.